You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of September 8th, 2023. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where the diner closes at 2, but you have to get there by 12:30 if you want the special. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
And true. No pancakes after noon.
Forget it. Forget it. Those world famous pancakes, off the menu after noon.
Off the menu after noon. Sorry, we can't flip them anymore.
Deal with it. So if you're looking for a Midwest diner to come to find out about stuff, we are available for parties and bar mitzvahs and pretty much everything.
We'd love to get together with anybody that wants to come to Springfield. So
Peter Baker, anybody.
Peter Baker, I would have a lot to say to Peter Baker.
Mm-hmm.
I would try to be civil, but it would be difficult.
At our Midwestern diner, we'd like to have a little word with you, Peter. Yeah, that'd be fun.
We have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of about next week.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because next week, Driftglass is going to be out of town for a couple days.
Traveling.
And so we are going to do one show. We're going to squeeze in one show next week. Mm-hmm. We'll probably record it on Wednesday and have it up for you. So don't panic. It's not an act of God. It's just Driftglass has to travel, and he'll be back, and then we'll have two shows and go back to our regular scheduled twice-a-week podcast on the following week.
And I'll bring you a full report of my travels, what political people I come across in the state. Oh,
Lord.
All I'm going to say is that the state I'm traveling to will be having the first primary or caucus in the nation. That's all I can say.
Yeah. You'll see cow corn on your way there.
I'll see cow corn and probably Nikki Haley.
You probably will. She'll probably wrestle you to the ground.
Yeah.
And ask for your vote.
Yeah, I'll ask her about a whole bunch of things.
We didn't have this in our notes, but did you notice that Vivek Ramaswamy was hit with a gigantic truth sign that was behind him?
Yeah.
That sort of sums up the Iowa caucuses for me.
Yeah.
A big sign that says truth falling on Vivek.
Flimsy signage? Is that what you mean by? Yeah, it's funny. All of these things are funny. All of it's funny. I got a good laugh out of it. Then I realized, and he's still doing fine.
Yeah.
Garbage people can't be stopped.
Nope. But Driftglass.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that the person who is flipping most publicly on Donald Trump this week, this is really notable. Somebody's flipping on Donald Trump and doing so in a way that is being announced in court.
Yep.
And it's an IT guy.
I'm not surprised. I used to be an IT guy. I know lots of IT guys.
Is a former IT guy. So I'd like to have your perspective on this.
We are absolutely badass ninjas until the police come. And then we will flip on anybody. We'll flip on everybody. Sometimes when the cops arrive, they don't know what they're doing or saying, and we have a good laugh at their expense. When I was at Columbia College, the internal security person showed up in her trench coat, which I thought was a bit much, and questioned us about the I forget the name of the server that we were talking about, but she kept insisting, because our servers, this was decades ago, our servers had gotten hacked and people had stashed software there along with hacks to get free software. So people were being directed to our server, and we caught on, they caught on. Our security sucked. We beefed it up. But she showed up and wanted to know basically who had access to the server and wanted to take fingerprints of the keyboard and fingerprints of the door. And we tried to explain to her, see a little wire over there on the wall? That's where they come in. And she couldn't get it through her head that we were talking about people who travel through the internet. They placed it here she kept looking for physical evidence and wheeled the thing out on a cart to be investigated. And, it was dumb, and, our security should have been better. And that was on us. But trying to explain to someone how the internet works and how data works to someone who's basically just no. was hilarious.
But that explains, Driftglass, that explains why crap like the Hunter Biden laptop works with a certain segment of the population.
They don't have any idea how anything works.
No. And that someone could plant data on a server from, inside the Russian borders and never, ever touch American soil.
As I recall, we had hacked software planted on the firmware for a printer of ours, which took some doing. But you know what I did when I had a guy, he has since passed away. I miss him terribly. When these sorts of things happen, when we need to find out questions that you just don't go around asking people outright, he had friends. He had friends in the gray market, and he had friends in the Pacific Rim. I'd say, Huey, could you go find out thus and so? And a couple of hours later, or a day later, or two, he would, I found out what you're looking for, and we'd do the thing. But I don't need to know who you talked to or how you found it. By the way, this was a severe limiting factor at the city of Chicago when I was there, because all the tech people they wanted, all the expertise they wanted would not work behind the city's iron firewall that was like from 1980. They needed access. We need to be able to talk to people all over the world, all of our friends and contacts, even people who are a little bit sketchy, to find out things. And nope, it'll look bad. It'll be on the front page of the Sun-Times tomorrow. And then the city will look bad. Well, then fuck you. We're not working for you. So IT people are very, very powerful wizards within their own realm. But man, when the cops show up, when the FBI shows up, we'll flip on everybody. Just give me a list of names. So God bless you, guy. I hope you got really well paid to be the IT guy at Mar-a-Lago, because that is not going to look great on the resume.
No, but you probably did save your skin and quite a bit of jail time.
Yeah.
By just saying, "Oh, hell no. I don't want Trump to pay for my lawyer.
Nope.
I want my own lawyer, and I want to cooperate."
Yeah.
What do I need to say so I don't go to jail? Well, you need to tell the truth. Oh, okay. Well,
I just ran the servers.
They told me to erase all these servers. Who did? The boss. Who's the boss? Well, we all know. Yeah. So.
And that's a really bad person to flip on you, because they really do have. That is the nexus. That's the point at which the crime intersects with the physical world.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely. I worked in IT at a help desk, and the number one skill everyone at the help desk had, and I don't know how one's brain is wired this way, but we had goldfish memory when it came to passwords. We really had a skill of a client giving us their passwords so we could look at what they were doing, logging off so they could go do what they needed to do. And if you'd asked me that password, it didn't get stored in my brain.
No, absolutely not.
I just wouldn't do it, because that would be all kinds of immoral, illegal, unethical, etc. It wasn't my job to know their password.
No, the pride.
But I did find a very senior manager who had treasurer responsibilities, whose password was user 12. And I reported him.
Dude.
I got him in big trouble.
Dude. Yeah, the pride in being an IT person, back when I was an IT person, and I was an IT person in the private sector and in the public sector and in the education sector, until my career shifted. Then I became a policy guy in the public sector. And now I do podcasts. So, I do it all. But believe me, when you have 300 or 400 computers at your disposal, you're a lot more frisky when it comes to wipe them out, start over again. Than when you have one and it's on loan, and you're very, very careful with my own machine. But the pride we took on our work back when I was a coder, especially, was being a ninja. We work behind the walls. We're quiet. We get our work done. It's usually at 2 a.m. Nobody knows who we are. Nobody can recognize us. But without us, the place would fall apart in 2 days.
Right.
And to be outed like this, to have a bright light shown on you.
Absolutely.
It's like, what?
I'm the IT guy from Mar-a-Lago. Yes. And here's my name on the news. Yeah. Yes.
That's not
something. It's got to be freaking him out. But now, better than going to jail.
The alternative, door number 2.
Yeah.
Door number 3, I guess, would be just Snowden your ass to Russia. But I don't think Glenn Greenwald has any more of those free passes. So,
honest to God,
I think he's fresh out.
Well, now, speaking of all that, let's talk about what was in your email inbox this week.
sometimes the past comes wafting in on Madeleines, the scent of Madeleines. That's a deep cut for all of you nerds out there. And sometimes it just drops in your email inbox. And I got a little something in my email inbox. I was sitting there, in the west wing of our estate, looking out at the vast acreage behind the house, wondering, whatever shall I write about today? Then I heard the bunk of something hitting my email inbox. And so I'll tell you a short story. It is once upon a time, back in the olden days, I worked for a city department, and there are lots of people in that department, and lots of us stay in touch with each other. We stay in touch with each other over an email link. I'm sort of a passive user of that, but I do respond every now and then. And this is going back 20 years. So this is a long time ago, up until about 15, 20 years ago. That's the time period when I was really doing my thing. It's a department that I was asked to leave the same week that Barack Obama was inaugurated. That's how long ago it was. So there are maybe 100 people in this thread, and they all work in different departments now because that department doesn't exist anymore. This is what happens when you let go of people like me. Your department vanishes overnight. But it's mostly about reunion stuff because most of these people are still in Chicago. And it's about where do you want to go to hang out and swap stories. It's been a few years. Let's get drunk. That's what the thread is about. However, every now and then someone intrudes on the thread who's a member and decides to impart some more information that is not appropriate to be shared on a thread with 75 to 100 people. Now, the person I'm talking about is a weirdo, a big Jesus guy. Loves him some Jesus Christ. And I don't know what Christ he worships, but it ain't mine. He's also African American. And he really, really, back when I knew him all those years ago, really wanted to believe in every conspiracy theory that came down the pike. He was very uncomfortable in his own skin. He did accounting, and every now and then you'd have to interact with this guy. And it was always an opportunity for him to sell whatever conspiracy he'd read about that week. Driftglass, you're very smart. So what did you hear about Hillary Clinton being a lesbian and Bill Clinton being a murderer? And every dumbass right-wing conspiracy was sucker bait for this guy. Never let up. And it was always, you don't want to talk to him because he'd want to segue a conversation about a counting question that you have that only he has the answer to into, did you hear about the lizard people? And I don't want to talk to him about the lizard people. But like every person in the place who had a daughter or a niece or a neighbor in the Girl Scouts, there would always come a time when the office was full of unavoidable cookie sellers. So this guy was unavoidable. And he would always couch these remarks in this kind of overly theatrical language. And to put it politely, I would tell him that he was full of shit. I would say it nicely, but I would stop him like, that's just not true. And I'd direct him to Snopes or whoever was doing that sort of thing at the time. But he'd always end the debunking session with, well, you never know. And then he'd go on to the next conspiracy theory. He was unstoppable. And he had that kind of weird, low-grade, feverish hustle fanatics have who has nothing else going on in his life, absolutely devoid of anything else going on in his life. So suddenly, a couple days ago, this guy pops into a thread about where shall we go out for our whatever anniversary reunion, whatever. And he says the following: hello, everyone. Just trying to share some more helpful information. Here's some additional information about COVID info. And the attached podcast. Of course it is. And the attached podcast that has some info that you can consider and share. Thanks, and God bless. And then he drops in a link to some MAGA podcaster I had never heard of named Hagman or Hageman, who is way down the rabbit hole. And it's full of stuff about the pandemic and how dangerous vaccines are.
Oh, and my God.
Also, did you know that the real instigator of the January 6th, Blue Gal, were Ukrainian spies? Did you know that?
Sure.
Did you know the CIA is secretly backing Ukrainian Nazis? Did you know that, Blue Gal?
God.
Did you know that? And then, of course, come the comedy stylings of Ms. Laura Loomer. and all of this...
like a punchline.
All of this information is in one fucking episode. And it's like this guy's 7,000th episode, and it's one of them. Yeah. And, but the point is this. There were freaks like this who were on the radar of those of us who live in the real world decades ago, decades before Trump showed up. And you can draw a straight line from this guy's sort of warped, weirdo, believe any bullshit perspective that he held 20 years ago to MAGA shit today. And no one would be surprised about it. So the idea that this all came out of thin air, it's all blue sky, nobody knows what happened, is nonsense. I had lots of these people. Remember, when you live among these people, you kind of get who they are.
Yeah.
And I was interacting with people like this all the time. And they were off. They were intellectually bulletproof. They could not be reasoned out of what they want to believed in. And every time you debunk something, they'd go, well, you never know.
You never know.
Or how about them bulls? Or whatever it was to change the subject. And the next day or next week, they'd be right back to believing crazy shit. Mm-hmm. And they were out there and they were in their millions and they listened to Rush Limbaugh and they listened to Alex Jones and they were just waiting for their Messiah to show up. And he finally showed up.
And I think Citizens United monetized those people in a hot way.
Yeah.
That level of stupidity is now legally monetized. You're legally allowed to grift. Just grift.
Yeah.
Yep.
But a lot of those people online aren't real people, are they, Blue Gal?
No. Well, that's the thing. I was going back. There's been a movement on Twitter today to say, no, I'm staying on Twitter to fight Nazis, which I kind of like that.
Yeah.
But I was going back, and I do this every once in a while, to look at the people that I blocked in 2016.
Yeah.
To see where they are now. Are they still MAGA? Are they still conspiracy theorists or whatever? And the thing is, I did it this week, and so many of them are just gone. The accounts are gone. Whether they moved to Truth Social or whether they were purged, which I think is the case for a lot of them.
Broomed out.
When they had the great bot purge, before Elon Musk bought Twitter, there was a purge of all of these kind of behind the Putin curtain bot accounts. And a lot of these folks are just gone.
Yep.
But they're coming back to class over and over again. And you see it when Trump is deep in trouble or when there's something big coming out. That's when Hunter Biden starts to trend.
Right.
That's when something called Blue MAGA starts to trend, which I guess is them calling Democrats a cult, I guess. I don't quite understand it.
That's cool. That's like saying,
and then today, this week.
I got a question. Is Blue MAGA Biden's Katrina, Blue Gal? Because
might be. But the big one this week was, and it was at a moment when I think the tape came out of Biden's lawyer saying, if we tell him that he has to return these documents, he's going to go ballistic.
He'll yell at us. He will go ballistic. Yep.
And over the course of a single hour, as that story broke, I think yesterday, my thread, my stream was flooded with anti-vaxxers.
Yes. Yep.
They're coming to kill you. Fauci's coming to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is timed. You know, they have these obvious, I don't know what to call them. Marbles? Scheduled triggers, marbles to toss into the machinery.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, if you can keep your armor on about it, I think it's interesting to watch. If you can't, if it's just a upsetting thing to see, stay away from it.
Well, and you and I have always theorized that at Fox News there's a box of trigger words.
Oh yeah,
and
no, well, it's not just trigger words; it's brainwashing words, like multiple syllables. Benghazi, Solyndra, and now Hunter Biden's laptop is one. What was it? Burisma. Burisma is the new one.
George Soros.
Yeah.
Soros.
That's an old one. But and that's an anti-Semitic one. And of course, we're seeing all this anti-Semitism on Twitter now. Blaming the ADL for anti-Semitism is kind of peak
right
MAGA,
on brand.
I gotta say.
Right on brand, man. Yep.
We've been there. You know, it's the liberals' fault. It's the anti-racist fault. It's Black Lives Matter's fault that there's so much racism.
I know.
Because if they hadn't continually called us racist, we wouldn't have said, well, now we have to do the crime because we're doing the time.
Now you're stealing a march on me there, Blue Gal. I did listen to that podcast this week.
You did, didn't you? You did.
I will only say this. Charlie Sykes of the Bulwark podcast made a fine point about the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, being attacked especially by Elon Musk and a bunch of people who were self-identified raging anti-Semite fascists who were all on his side. And it was the attack the victim. It was maybe if the ADL didn't make such a big deal, maybe if the Jewish people didn't make such a big deal, there wouldn't be any anti-Semitism.
Like the ADL is behaving like Nazis. Did you hear that?
And it causes the people who object to anti-Semitism are the cause of the anti-Semitism.
Yes, right.
And I thought, where have I heard this before? Where have I heard? Oh, yeah, I remember. It was a few years ago when Charlie Sykes on the very same podcast was saying, you know what causes Trump and racism and all the problems? A big part of that was all those liberals, crying wolf. All the liberals who kept insisting that there was so much racism and all this racism and racism in the GOP, and it made us numb to the fact that until the real racist came along, and then we were all caught by surprise, and it was the same fucking thing, except in the case of the ADL and Elon Musk, it's those people. Yep. Those people over there. Isn't it horrifying? Isn't it a tragedy? Isn't it unforgivable that they're blaming the Jews for anti-Semitism? That's disgusting. But when it's your party, Charlie Sykes, when it's your Republican Party and you participated in it, isn't it awful how we were all turned into racists? We were all blinded to the racism by all the crying wolf about racism on the part of those goddamn liberals. And I just said, you know what? I should probably mention this on the podcast. And now I have. So now there you go.
But you played a part of, I don't know, it wasn't a Bulwark podcast. It was a Rick Wilson podcast.
Oh, yeah. Good
in
old
the
Rick
kitchen
Wilson.
Yesterday.
I did.
And I really was stunned. I mean, it takes a lot to stun me. But when you're listening to Rick Wilson and all of a sudden you think you're listening to the Professional Left podcast.
Yeah. Well, you're listening
and
to
he's taking all the credit.
Oh,
for
and
these ideas.
Literally the financial credit for it.
Yes.
I because it checked all the boxes. It was wonderful, and it was every liberal blogger going back for decades.
Yep.
But I'm listening to Stuart Stevens, who I have a lot of respect for, who wrote a book about it was all a lie and takes responsibility and ownership for it all. I'm listening to Rick Wilson and Stuart Stevens talk about, and here's the 4 things they talked about for like 40 minutes, 30 minutes. The first one was the derangement of the Republican Party. The GOP's fucking crazy. My God, can you believe how fucking crazy it is? And you don't on the list. Every day, in every podcast in America, there's a top 3 or 4 or 5 or 8. Can you believe what Marsha Blackburn said today? Can you believe what Marjorie... Like, yeah, we get it. We get it. We've told you. We told you this was coming. The plague is here. You don't need to keep pointing out individual plague bearers and say, ooh, look at that one. They're especially postulant. No, we don't really need that. But all over it. Number 2, the complicity of the conservative media. Can you believe how god-awful? Dude, the conservative media paid for your fucking house. What are you talking about? You were the king of the conservative media right up until you weren't. And then it became a problem. Suddenly the conservative media was full of shit. The third one was like, oh, this is perfect. I can almost hear liberals' pens writing this stuff 20 fucking years ago, which was, the real problem with the mainstream media. It's all this both sides do it stuff. All this both siderism. This both sides do it in the media is really bad. I don't know if you know that, Stuart. Yes, Rick, it's really bad. Oh my God, it caught people. What's wrong with you people? Can't you see that one side is bad, one side isn't, and one side so?
Yeah, that was the point when I just looked at you in the kitchen like,
implication.
Where is Rick Wilson getting all of this?
Yeah, well, I think I know where. But the final one was the threat from this organization called No Labels. I don't know if you know about this organization, Blue Gal, but
the one that you called out the day after they announced?
Yeah, that one, 13, 14 years ago, whenever it was. Yeah, and the threat from No Labels. And really, if this were all part of a larger engagement on these topics where people like me or even people, any liberal, anywhere, we're welcome to engage in that conversation. We're welcome to talk about that based on our vast breadth of experience. I wouldn't be so pissed, but I discovered that the only hope for our democracy, Blue Gal, is for me to subscribe to the Lincoln Project's Resolute Square thing. That's the only hope for us. Because that's why we started Resolute Square, Stuart. That's right, Rick. Because nobody else is talking about the derangement of the GOP or the complicity of the conservative media. We need an alternate source of media. We need someone else out there telling the truth. Like, yeah, we had that, and it was called the liberal blogosphere, and we were cooking along real good, except you guys destroyed us. You and the mainstream media, you're now bitching about their both sides do it, smothered us. Killed us off. We have some weeds problem in the front yard. You're the guys who poured vinegar and rock salt all over us and choked us out. And now the tiny shell, the fig leaf portion of the Republican Party, the respectable portion of the Republican Party, the 1% of the party that slipped off when Donald Trump took over, the mask that fell off, that's now occupying all of the space that liberals should be occupying in the media.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to any of these podcasts, in the middle or at the end, there's always a call for you to subscribe to their media thing and to their other thing and to their Discord and like us and hit that subscribe. Which I don't mind that. That's what you do on a podcast. But it is so weird to me that the people who invented this critique, who have refined this critique, who have been right about this critique all along, these people are actively hostile to us.
Yeah.
They treat us like shit. They treat us like
and you know what, Driftglass? They should really be on our side because democracy is at stake.
I know. And every one of them says this is no longer about Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah. And then they shit all over Democrats constantly. Yeah.
So okay, And again, if these were 2-bit hustlers working, busking on the street with 5,000 followers, but these are people who have the benefit of having rocket engines strapped to them, thanks to MSNBC and CNN, the New York Times, promoting them and giving the back of the hand of the people who were there first and who were right all along, who I can name you 20 of those people. Doesn't have to be us, Blue Gal. I don't care if it's me or you.
In fact, it probably shouldn't be us, Driftglass.
No. Because
we're at the back of that line.
Well, and as you know, if you watch cable television, they don't like bald white men with goatees. They just don't allow those people on television.
Of course not. Hey, Driftglass, I just want to pray for and hope for a side effect to the Medicare price negotiations. A couple weeks ago, Joe Biden announced the 10 drugs that will be subject to Medicare price negotiating. And one of them is Jardiance. And I really hope that the pharmacy company that runs those horrible, horrible Broadway number ads with Jardiance is really swell. Have to cut back. Because they're not going to cut executive compensation.
No. The stock prices
they don't want to do anything that makes their stockholders mad.
No.
Which their stockholders are going to be mad anyway. Yep. But if they don't make a 4,000% profit per pill, maybe they can stop advertising those pills so much. Yeah. That's what I'm hoping.
When you, you and I make a little joke at home about it's the Jardiance and Impreza show starring Chris Hayes.
Yes.
Because it is.
And that's the other thing though, is cable news is really dependent on these pharma ads.
100%. And all of them. This is truly nonpartisan. No. If you tune in, other than the My Pillow,
the My Pillow Hour,
My Pillow Hour, pretty much every cable news outlet is entirely dependent or majorly dependent on pharma advertising.
Yep.
And that's why you don't hear a lot about the joys of.
There's some breaking news that I heard right before we came on air. A group of Republican senators is going to attempt, and I'm sure they're going to fail, but they're going to attempt to do an investigation into Joe Biden's Plus program for student loans. Yeah, to try to stop it.
I was going to guess form the tallest human pyramid.
No,
in history.
This is a renegotiation of repayment for student loans that you have to apply for. So it's not just blanket for everybody. And if you make less than $15 an hour, your payment is zero. Yeah. So it is not for rich kids. It's not free loans for rich kids. It's if you are making less than $15 an hour, then your payment plan will be zero until you're making more than that.
You know what? That's fine. Whatever you say, fine. But before I believe you, I'm going to have to check with the Hageman podcast to find out how much money Joe Biden's making off this whole deal.
Of this.
Because you know he's making like $1 billion off of this
$1 billion, and he's hiding it in Hunter Biden's laptop. You know that. So, 4 million people in 2 weeks applied for this program. This is Obamacare all over again.
I hope they're registered.
It is the policy of the Republican Party to love watching people suffer.
Yes, it is. It is.
It's a sadistic party.
It is. Well, there's a lot of discussion about the third, fourth, fifth, sixth tier symptoms of that.
Mm-hmm.
But the apex of the Republican Party, the prime directive, is hating anything Democrats want to do.
Right.
Automatically hating and opposing anything Democrats want to do, because Democrats, you and I, are pure evil. So it doesn't. So, and that's why there's no policy behind anything. It's just automatic knee-jerk reflex, because they have convinced people like my former colleagues, a few of them back in the olden days, that we're the devil.
Yeah.
And whatever we do must be the devil's work. And the devil's work must be opposed. So if we are in favor of reforming the immigration system and giving a pass to people who have been here since they were 2 or born here or whatever, that's the height of evil. If we would like women's health care preserved and their civil rights preserved, it's because we want to murder babies.
Right.
And and the stuff that they believed last week is the opposite of what they believe this week, because suddenly Democrats want to do a thing that they once upon a time thought was a good idea. So now they have to hate it. They have to hate the military. They have to give Tommy Tuberville latitude to destroy the top tier of the U.S. military. And everything else is a symptom of that fundamental mental disorder.
Well, speaking of mental disorder, Driftglass, I want to talk about Donald Trump for a minute. Not specifically, and I'm not going to quote him.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about this 14th Amendment thing that's all of a sudden gone mainstream.
You should have led with that. That's the sexy thing.
And we're big fans of Crew, I want to say. We're big fans of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, who are leading the way on this lawsuit. But now they have allies in the Federalist Society.
Yes, they do.
And so the mainstream media is picking up on it, because of that.
Oh, yeah. No,
because
it has
when
to
there's heavy hitter Republicans saying, yes, we think this is a good idea, then all of a sudden it's a story. And has legitimacy. If it's some liberal group doing it, they're always going to fight Trump. But never Trumpers and anyone who wants to rebuild the Republican Party so we can have more horse race coverage.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's, we talked a long time about this yesterday, that what mainstream media and particularly MSNBC is doing by having all these never Trumpers on is preserving their way of life, which is to continue to have horse race coverage with two parties that are both equally legitimate.
Right.
And so 6 voters in Colorado have filed a lawsuit seeking to block Trump from the state's ballots in 2024 for his role in the insurrection on January 6th. Their suit is brought by Crew and contends that Trump should be disqualified from running in future elections under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which prohibits anyone engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution from holding office. And the reason they chose Colorado and found Republicans in particular to file this lawsuit as the plaintiffs is they want to keep Trump off of the primary ballot. And so they need Republican voters to do that. Colorado is a state whose election laws allow for a regular citizen to challenge the appearance on the ballot of a candidate.
Right. That's right.
And it goes right to trial. So it's not as complicated. So this is a good state to sort of push this idea.
And it gets slingshot right to the Supreme Court after that.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
And then other states like Michigan are looking at it and saying, what is the court going to? Is the court going to decide that a state can determine that Donald Trump or anyone is ineligible to appear on their state's ballot? Because this is the other thing. I mean, this is the problem that Trump had. Elections in this country are very local. They're managed locally. And that is a protection against a conspiracy like the Donald Trump conspiracy, right? You can't just fix the election. You can't just turn to the verifying of the Electoral College votes and flip that and expect it to fix the election. He had to file 60 lawsuits, and he lost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But that decentralization is actually a protection, because there might be corruption in one precinct, and you want to fix that, but it's not going to affect the outcome of a national election if one precinct is corrupt. Okay. I have heard people I care about and respect say that this 14th Amendment idea, while yes, Donald Trump is disqualified from being president under this, they absolutely agree that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution. That's a given. Do not want this to happen. Don't think this is a good idea. That this will lead to electoral discontent and a sense of cheating.
On whose part?
I push back on that because
on whose part?
Well, I think there's a couple things that work here. One is it feels like a cheat to some people.
To who?
To fellow Democrats, surprisingly.
Okay.
It feels like, well, we're just doing an end run rather than defeating him electorally. And of it, the other part of it, frankly, is that it's going to be easy. They perceive that it's going to be easy to run against Trump, that's going to help the Democratic cause, particularly in Senate races where, we're up against the wall at this point.
They want him on that wall. They need him on that wall.
They want the primaries to be lit.
Right.
And those Senate primaries are going to be lit. Mark my words.
Yes,
Mark
they
that
are.
down. So, wanting Donald Trump to run is I guess, a valid excuse politically. I get a little itchy when I hear, yeah, it's in the Constitution, but.
Yeah, exactly. Wait a minute. Especially from people who are all about originalism and plain text reading of the Constitution.
Yeah. Or not. Yeah. My woke friends, my liberal friends are saying, no, hold off on that. I don't think we should do that. Yes, it's in the Constitution, but.
No, I mean the conservatives, Republicans, who are up in arms at the very suggestion of this, and it's a theft. Like, you're the freaks who are absolutely, it's the plain text of the original writing of the person who wrote the thing in the document.
Well, and as long as it enshrines white male power, that's fine.
Right.
But if it starts to infringe on Confederate power, we have a problem with it.
Don't touch. And the other people I have heard, you probably heard this too, is, well, what about the blowback? I mean, if you can start just knocking candidates off the ballot.
That was the thing, blowback, and they'll want to knock everyone off the ballot. Well, knock everyone off the ballot who engages in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution of the United States.
Well, and this is where it gets a little tricky, because knock everyone off the ballot who engages in insurrection. They're currently in plans to impeach Joe Biden for nothing, right?
Oh, yeah.
For thin air. So we keep tripping over the fact that those words don't mean anything to the reprogrammable meatbags on the right. They will simply say,
I'm feeling as though, but what will Republicans do if we stand up for the Constitution is how we got here.
That's my point. My point is the idea that, we got to be cautious because Republicans might overreact.
Yeah, dude, of course they will.
The whole 50 years of overreacting is how we got here.
Right.
And 50 years of not punching them in the fucking throat every time they do it is how we got here.
Yeah.
And yet, you know what? They might overreact. What, you mean like try to, steal the election? Overthrow the government? Up in Wisconsin, maybe try to impeach a judge over nothing?
Keep hostages in Iran an extra 3 months so they can win the White House in 1980. I mean, I can go back decades and decades and decades of time. What will Republicans do?
Oh, no, they might overreact. Well, okay, bring it on. Because all I've seen so far is one long, hysterical, racist primal scream masquerading as a party. And, don't want to make them mad. And it's such a dumb argument. No, the argument about the Hugh Hewitts of that ilk, the toady Nazi frontmen, the respectable frontmen for the scumbags, are the ones who are like, well, it sets a terrible precedent and blah blah blah. Like, no, asshole. A minute ago, your argument about why you are allowed to have a bazooka is, well, says so in the Second Amendment. It's the plain text reading. We're originalists over here. We believe in the original meaning of the whole document, and nobody should interpret it otherwise. except, of course, when it comes to Donald Trump, in which case we need to carve out an exception. So that's my point, is that I would like to see a free and fair election between the two top candidates of two healthy parties. We do not have a healthy party on the right. We have a deranged fascist party on the right, and that's problematic. So whatever we have to do within the law to destroy that fascist party forever and ever, I'm in favor of it. Now,
and Rick Wilson would agree with you, Driftglass.
I'm sure he would.
That he's too busy inventing it himself.
Well, I wouldn't know because he blocks me on the Twitter.
You want to talk about the New York Times and their headline problem?
Yeah, they got a bit of a headline. You all know this. But I'm going to go into it in some depth and then talk about other stuff around it. But yeah, the gentleman named Mark Jacobs, who used to be an editor at the Chicago Tribune, who is now on Twitter, who's always angry all the time in all the right ways. But I do have a question for him, which is, why weren't you saying this shit when you were editor for the Tribune? So, okay, you're out now. You're free to talk. He now writes occasionally at the Courier newsroom, and he ticked off a number of recent New York Times headlines that you might consider problematic. This is right in our wheelhouse, and Rick Wilson's as well now, because it talks about the way the New York Times headline writers and a lot of their reporters, a lot of their journalists, a lot of their stories are so hooked on both sides in everything, even though the last 8 years have proven beyond a doubt that it isn't true. You know what, Blue Gal? Opposing fascism isn't tribalism.
Thank you.
It just isn't. Anyway, he identifies a few of them that are problematic, like the fact that this shadowy monster named politics is the problem, not Republicans. Headline, quote, partisan politics put a huge win for public health at risk. No, it was Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's when they make it sound like the Supreme Court rulings are optional. Alabama lawmakers declined to create new majority black congressional districts.
Oh my God!
As if they were just invited. They just declined to do it. You know, you were
like
given a
dessert,
choice.
like it's right. Dessert.
No, I'm full. I'm so full of racism. I couldn't racism another bite, and so they just decline it. When Governor Ron DeSantis went on a book banning education harassment campaign, the Times found the bright side. DeSantis takes on the education establishment and builds his brand. No, he bans books because he's a fucking fascist. Really, I swear to God, the New York Times is full of people who aren't going to learn the lesson of history until history comes to take them away to re-education camps in Utah.
Yep.
Over the Labor Day weekend, you might remember this, President Joe Biden went to Florida to inspect hurricane damage and expressed a willingness to appear with Governor Ron DeSantis. But Ron DeSantis told him to fuck off, right? That's the story.
That's the story.
And the Times just kept shitting the bed over and over again. First, it was Biden's fault. Quote, Biden won't meet with DeSantis in Florida during tour of hurricane damage. Then it was both sides. DeSantis and Biden won't meet in Florida during tour of hurricane damage. Later, in a follow-up story, it was still both sides. Quote, in Florida, even a hurricane can't sweep away presidential politics. It's presidential politics, Blue Gal. When Republicans created the debt ceiling crisis last spring, the Times wrote the headline this way, finger-pointing won't save anyone if default leads to economic collapse. Again, let's not blame the people who are to blame for this because, I don't know, maybe they'll come to my house and shoot me. Or maybe my livelihood depends on staying friendly with fascists, which is more likely the truth.
Yep.
Then there are the New York Times hacks like Peter Baker who have swapped out the played out both sides do it for the newer, sexier version of the same thought, which is, say it with me now, tribalism.
Tribalism.
And here's one of Peter Baker's tweets from August. In 1994, 21% of Republicans and 17% of Democrats viewed the other party very unfavorably. Today, 62% of Republicans and 54% of Democrats do. Aaron Zitner explores the tribalism that has taken over our politics, unquote. I believe we talked about this last week. Then he promotes a bit of Wall Street Journal fluff about tribalism ruining everything. Now, tribalism, as we have noted on this podcast for years, is now everywhere and is taking over the same ecological niche once occupied by both sides do it. Yep. And I would like our listeners right now to stand up and give themselves a huge pat on the back because you did it, boys and girls. You did it. You should be very proud of this because our motto on this podcast, both sides don't, has been so effectively used to turn both-siderism into a punchline that some pundits, especially never-Trumpers, began to feel compelled to preface their both sides bullshit with, I want to make it clear, I'm not both sidesing this. And then they do it.
And then they start talking about tribalism.
But they're aware that the spotlight is on them.
Yes.
Even Rick Wilson has decided both sides do it is bullshit. So congratulations, everyone. Get up and take a bow. But
you guys deserve all the credit.
You do.
Yep.
Applause. However, that whole thing about I'm not both sidesing this, but here's the both sides is very awkward sounding and it sounds stupid. So the word tribalism was born. Yeah. And now it's everywhere. Every op-ed page, every Never Trump media outfit trying to get people to subscribe, every Republican in exile who has a new project or movement they want you to join, every pundit trying to sound savvy, all of them now using "we're not tribal" as a lure. And I have in my notes, it's just slapping a new label on the same old poison and selling strychnine as minty fresh, no labels party favors. Now, there's 3 more New York Times headlines I'll go over very quickly. This time they're about the economy. Why a strong U.S. economy is making stock investors jittery. Against the odds, the U.S. economy chugs along as fears linger. Inflation has been easing fast, but wild cards lie ahead.
Oh my God.
And then this, Biden struggles to make Bidenomics a plus, not a minus. I just at some point started throwing up in a bag, so I stopped writing. But I do want to add one more thing. I went out to the Google to search for the word tribalism. The number 2 thing on the list was from Christianity Today, August 23rd, 2023. And the headline, I warned you, you're going to laugh. It's absolutely true. Quote, "Losing our religion, David Brooks on the allure of tribalism."
Yeah.
The column and the author talks conservatism, conversion, and connection, unquote. And I swear to God, I looked it up and it popped up in the second place on Google. David Brooks in Christianity Today talking about tribalism. Yep. And that is the end of history.
Speaking of searching for things, our friend Kevin Holtzinger sent us a very interesting email. That 2025 plan that conservatives have put out, that it's a huge document of what they plan to do when conservatives regain power, and a lot of it is just go full fossil fuel. But Kevin Holtzinger went and looked up contracept, so he would get contraceptives and contraception, and they got plans for contraception too.
Of course they
big
do.
Time.
It's the next thing. It's the next thing in controlling women completely. Yep.
Controlling women. Absolutely. All right. Biden is boring, Driftglass. I don't know if you knew that.
I know. I love boring. I'm totally cool.
Boring's good. And having a boring president means that things are getting done. And I know that the cognoscenti and the media are very upset about this because it means low ratings for cable news.
It does. And book sales
much lower than there were in the age of Trump, when we were all watching the news every night with a huge glass of wine, worrying if the world was going to end before we woke up. But it is perfectly okay in this political environment to go full negative partisanship and to just vote for the boring guy because you're voting against the psychotic guy.
Yeah. I don't know, Blue Cow, because I don't know if you know this. Democrats refuse to acknowledge this, but I'm going to tell you right now, Joe Biden's old. I don't know if you know that.
I was going to say Biden's old. Is that what you're talking about? Because I knew that too.
I think we should do a whole episode on the fact that Joe Biden's old and no one will talk about it. We should talk about it incessantly. The fact that no one will talk about the fact that Joe... You know who talks about Joe Biden being old? Joe Biden does.
Joe Biden makes jokes about being old before he goes to Pilates class.
Right. So yes, we know he's old, and we know he's not psychotic and a fascist and going to destroy the country.
I'm sitting here doing a 10-minute YouTube of lymphedema stretches, people.
Uh-huh.
And the president of the United States is riding bikes and going to Pilates class.
Uh-huh. Now, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Are Biden's Pilates class bad news for the economy, Blue Gown?
Well, they're worrying Wall Street, Driftglass.
A plus, not a minus.
A plus, not a minus. Yeah. Absolutely.
Are fears lingering over his Pilates?
Look, there are problems in this country with the economy.
Yeah,
there are absolutely problems. There is a boom in apartment building, and it turns out that like 90% of the new apartments being built in the United States today are luxury apartments.
Yeah.
Are not affordable housing.
And you know what? There's a whole bunch of empty office buildings around because people would rather work at home.
Right.
There seems to be an excess of capacity in that regard.
Yeah. And I hope that cities are taking note of that. And storefronts. There was an article in the New York Times about how are cities managing by decorating their storefronts that are empty. And like cities are requiring buildings that have empty storefronts on the first floor to decorate them somehow so it doesn't look like blight.
Yeah. Hire artists.
And the commenter in the article was like, I really wish they just put a public washroom in there because that would really help things a lot in the city.
Yeah.
But, what are you going to do?
You know what, Blue Gal? After the Allies defeated the Nazis, the world was still in pretty terrible shape, and there was still another war to fight in the Pacific. But you know what? Yeah. People celebrated beating the Nazis.
People celebrated. Yes, they did.
Because that was a good thing. Things had gotten better. People didn't say, well, I guess everything's fine now. We can all just go home because everything's great.
The repeating of the drumbeat of Fox News among people that should know better is amazing. Like Adam Kinzinger, Driftglass.
Yeah. Okay. That was a very weird segue, but I'll take it. I wrote Adam Kinzinger up today because he is a congressman from Illinois who I have talked about before on this podcast.
A former congressman from Illinois.
A former congressman who was redistricted out of his district. And he got very mad at Democrats for doing that. And except I noted at the time a thing that nobody else noted, which was he got redistricted into another district with a MAGA Republican scumbag. He could have run against.
That's the thing. He could have run against him. Yeah.
He had a war chest. He had a name recognition. He could have run against a MAGA person, and he could have maybe won or lost, but he could have, walked the talk. But he didn't. Instead, he bitched that Democrats didn't want me in the Congress, so they just gerrymandered me. And he got a lot of, tea and sympathy from all of his Never Trump friends. Well, that's great. So the thing is, I heard him on a popular podcast. I won't repeat the name of it because you've already heard it 9 times already, but this is a different version because all these people do is talk to each other. They talk amongst themselves and each other. But here's the thing. I'm going to quote him now about how to win elections. Now, listen very carefully. This is where, again, the only advice I can give and how to defeat this, like we can talk about it, and we need to because people need to be aware of it. The only advice I can give you is have to win elections. And by the way, you win elections by, listen carefully, seeing what people care about today and going after those issues, right?
Okay.
Got it? Okay.
Got it.
See what the people want and go after those issues. Cool. Got it. 90 seconds later, here's Adam Kinzinger again. As a member of Congress, I can tell you the pressure is because we dealt with this. Remember what it was like during the defund Obamacare, where it was like you go to a town hall and you go in the district and it's just this one little thing. And he goes on about how it doesn't matter how good your congressional record is in Wisconsin. The only question the voters have who go to town hall meetings is, are you going to vote to impeach the justice? I had the telegroup tell me the pressure is so intense, you end up having to either decide, I'm not going to run again, or I'm going to impeach the justice. And Adam Kinzinger calls this, it's like mob rule.
Huh.
Dude, you just said the way to win elections is to listen to what people want and then go after the thing that they want. They're telling the people, they're telling you what they want. They want to impeach the justice. Why? Because they are garbage people. Because they're brainwashed meatbags. Thank you, Wisconsin radio and television. Thank you, Charlie Sykes. So maybe the question isn't, what do they want? Maybe the question is, why do they want it? Do they want it like Democrats do because we want clean air and clean water and health care and shelter and non-poisonous food and a decent environment for the planet? Or is it because Republicans, they want things because Democrats want them and they want to burn them down? Because Democrats are awful, mean, Satanist scum who have to be destroyed, and anything we propose, they're against. That's the question you should ask yourself. And then you should ask yourself, why the fuck are you still in that party? Because your voters do exactly what you tell them, you say people need to listen to. They're telling you exactly what they want. And what they want is insane. And maybe you should ask yourself, how did they get that way? But I don't think that's going to happen in the immediate future.
No, I don't think Adam Kinzinger thinks he can market himself that way.
He's not deep that way.
Let's do a news roundup, Driftglass. The Bidening continues.
Uh-huh.
Senator John Fetterman calls Republicans' impeachment efforts a big circle jerk.
Yeah.
So he wins our Don't Sugarcoat It award for this week.
And I watched a bunch of MAGAs going, have some respect for the office.
Yes, I think the potty mouth is unnecessary.
Yeah. You really? Have you looked behind you? Have you seen who's running your party? And next to him is Mitch McConnell staring off into space, unable to say anything. I mean,
look, they clutch their pearls over circle jerk while voting for an actual rapist.
Right. And again, they are telling you, Adam Kinzinger, who they are and what they want. Yeah. So if you don't choose to listen to it, if you don't approve of it, maybe you should think about the fact that you're in this party.
He's going to join another party. It's called No Labels.
Oh, no, he already has his country over party movement, Blue Gal. Every one of these people has their own subscription, little boutique cause. Yeah. This is called Country Over Party or Party First or Country First or whatever the fuck it's called.
I get them all confused. Country Over Party, I thought that was the ABC News guy.
That's Matthew Dowd.
Maybe I'm wrong.
His one is Matthew Country Dowd. First. But it's all the same thing. It's all, first. I don't want to be tribal. Yeah. We don't want to be tribal, Blue Gal. That tribalism is so bad. It smells so bad. It makes you look bad when we wear those tribal pants. So we have to be something else, and we're going to be country over party. We don't want to identify anything. But at least he has a seat at CNN whenever he wants it. In the news, back in the news, Biden canceled all 7 Trump-issued oil and gas leases in Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and prohibited oil drilling in 13 million acres in the federally owned National Petroleum Reserve. Bam.
Thank you. Yes, good news. A federal judge ruled that Trump was liable a second time for defaming writer E. Jean Carroll, and that the upcoming trial will simply focus on what money damages he owes her. We're lying about her again.
How much more money? Well, enough money to deter him from doing that again, which should be a lot of money. This should hurt. This should take a lot of money out of his pocket. A New York judge, this is a completely different judge, mind you, rejected Trump's request to delay his October 2nd civil fraud trial, calling the request, quote, completely without merit, unquote. Yay.
From Raw Story, Trump's dumpster cult caused Peter Navarro's downfall. This is according to Michael Cohen, the former Trump lawyer, who acknowledges once being a member of that dubious group, who said that during an appearance on All In with Chris Hayes, he believes Navarro is in for a world of hurt he doesn't yet understand. I think I've asked you a version of this before, but I'll ask again because it feels newly relevant, particularly given that Peter Navarro tape and watching these parade of folks who are convicted of seditious conspiracy, Hayes said, noting that some will be facing federal prison sentences of over 15 years. He referred to Cohen's penny drop moment when he determined this guy is not loyal to me. What is it that keeps people from seeing that before they have that moment when they realize Trump is not loyal to him? And Michael Cohen said, it's stupidity. I mean, for whatever reason, you get entrenched into this dumpster cult of Donald Trump. And why Peter Navarro decided to show contempt to the court, contempt to the congressional subpoena, it's stupidity.
Yeah, it's stupidity. And never underestimate the power of arrogant stupidity, Blue Gal. This is from the New York Times. Persistent trend. Can you guess what it's about, Blue Gal?
Is it about tribalism?
No, it's not. The discussion is going to be, but after the Supreme Court struck down Roe versus Wade last year, it looked like the number of abortions would soon plummet across the country. But new estimates suggest that has not happened. The number of legal abortions has held steady, if not increased, nationwide since 2020. Our colleague Amy Schoenfeld-Walker and Allison McGann reported today. How is that possible? New data from the Guttmacher Institute, a nonprofit specializing in reproductive health, implies that more people are traveling across state lines or using telemedicine to get abortions, including through the use of the abortion pill. The increase in use of those options has offset the decreases in abortions resulting from new state bans, Amy and Ellison found. States bordering those with bans largely saw increases in the number of abortions in the first half of 2023 compared with the same period in 2020. In Illinois, for example, estimated abortions rose 69%. And those are all those refugees from Iowa and Indiana and Missouri and all those other backwards, fucked up states where they don't respect a woman's right to choose.
So-called right-to-work laws and the Janus decision have eroded job quality of in-demand jobs. Go figure. States that protect collective bargaining rights have higher average worker earnings. Again, go figure. They experience faster wage growth and have added union members since 2013, according to a new study by the Illinois Economic Policy Institute. Not the Illinois Policy Institute. Those are two different things.
Very different things, yes.
The Project for Middle-Class Renewal at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, or Champaign-Urbana, excuse me. Researchers conclude that the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data showing a declining unionization rate nationally actually offers an incomplete picture of the U.S. labor market, with the 23 states that protect collective bargaining gaining 100,000 union members over the last decade, while the 27 states that have such so-called right-to-work laws losing 336,000 members, fueling the overall national union decline. So go unions.
Go unions. I mean, figure it out.
You get paid more, you have better work experience, and the jobs move to those states because people want to work there.
Yeah. It's okay. Send us your best people. You know, we'll take them, and that's coming up in the news as well.
And we'll tweet pictures of J.B. Pritzker smiling real big.
Oh yeah. We're loving this. I mean, it's a tragedy for the rest of the country, but you know, we'll take them.
Oh yeah, we're definitely benefiting from all of this. Yeah.
A federal court struck down. Oh God, speaking of Alabama's congressional map. The 3-judge panel wrote that it was, quote, deeply troubled that the state legislature refused to comply with the Voting Rights Act and a Supreme Court order to create a second district with either a black majority or something quite close to it to give black voters an opportunity to elect a representative of their choice.
Republicans want to stop black people from voting.
Yes, they do. That's their agenda.
And the Proud Boys are now the prison boys.
Yeah.
They're going to big boy jail for a long time. Yeah. And I find it interesting that the news media covered the arrest, covered them going to trial, and then covered the sentencing. But did you hear much during the trial about evidence or
Nope.
They kept that really pretty close to the chest about what they did and how they did it and what they're guilty of. It's seditious conspiracy. We got that. Right. That's the charge. Mm-hmm. But I feel as though the court and the prosecutors were kind of careful about blabbing all over the place about how they went about doing this, because they don't want it to be an instruction manual for anybody else.
Yep. Yeah. I know that they had weapons caches outside of the Capitol area. They were ready to go. When Donald Trump,
they were the tip of the spear breaking into the Capitol building.
And when they caused the catastrophe and they started killing some people inside the Capitol, Donald Trump would declare, use the Insurrection Act and deputize them. They'd go get their weapons.
That was the plan. They were his army. Yeah.
And then we're off to the races. In local news, I love this story. Governor J.B. Pritzker, quote, "As governor of Illinois, I've made it my mission to make our state the best to raise a family, including for our LGBTQ plus community. If you're looking for a place to be authentically yourself, come on up to Illinois. Trans rights are human rights here," unquote.
And it doesn't hurt that he has a transgender sister.
Yes.
Who's also a billionaire philanthropist.
Yep.
So nobody misgenders that person.
No.
Although the Pritzker family, no one in that family misgenders her.
No.
She gives away a lot of money. From the Idaho Statesman, and this is one story that I wanted to highlight, and also there's one in Oklahoma. While extremists chase away Idaho Teacher of the Year, states leaders stay silent. Far-right extremists have chased away yet another good person from Idaho. This time, they scared off Karen Lauritsen, Idaho's 2023 Teacher of the Year. That's a statewide award. Lauritsen, who was a 4th grade teacher in Post Falls in North Idaho, is leaving after right-wing activists and their allies attacked her and called her a left-wing activist, according to the Boston Globe. Among her offenses, supporting LGBTQ plus students, African American students, and apparently teaching about the United Nations.
Oh, no.
To her fourth graders. The attacks came after she was named Teacher of the Year, selected by a blue ribbon panel from among 13 finalists. Can you imagine the kind of person who, upon hearing that a teacher was just named Teacher of the Year, reacts by trying to find ways to attack that teacher for being an educator?
I
can too. Absolutely. I absolutely can. There's a teacher winning an award. Let's go find out how woke she is.
Well, there's a teacher with a big spotlight. Let's grab that spotlight away from her.
And grab that spotlight. Absolutely. Yep. Lauritsen was accused of promoting transgenderism. Extremists reportedly found social media posts in which Lauritsen showed support for the LGBTQ community and Black Lives Matter, as if supporting all students were a bad thing for a teacher to do. The punchline in all of this is she has left Idaho.
Where'd she go, Blue Gal?
Illinois.
Really?
And she got a welcome tweet from J.B. Pritzker.
Really? Do you happen to have that in our notes? Could you share that with us?
Welcome to Illinois, Karen. We're so excited to have you here. Because you know what? There's a teacher shortage nationwide, Driftglass.
Yeah. And a good teacher
And if you put a rainbow in a Facebook post, you get fired in Idaho.
Right. Well, follow that rainbow all the way across the country and land it in
Illinois. And I'm sorry that this is what's happening to our country right now. That we have, economic and, moral refugees leaving these states of hate to come to a place of safety.
I am proud that we are a place of safety.
Idaho is also shocked that their OBGYNs are leaving in droves. Well, we didn't know that was in the bill. We just thought we were protecting life. It's absurd. And now they have a doctor shortage, a serious doctor shortage in Idaho.
Enjoy your libertarian paradise
paradise where no one with any skills wants to live. In a related story, this is something I wrote up at Crooks and Liars this week. The state of Oklahoma, Summer Boysmere was Teacher of the Year in her high school back in 2018. Oklahoma passed an stupid anti-CRT law and required teachers and librarians to cover or remove so-called undesirable literature from their libraries and classrooms. So Boysmere got out some red butcher block paper and wrapped all of the bookshelves. And she wrote on the outside, "Books the state does not want you to read," and provided a QR code linking to the Brooklyn Public Library's Banned Book Initiative, which helps students throughout the country fight censorship. Summer Boysmere was forced out of her job. And so the Brooklyn Public Library's Banned Book Initiative hired her. Yeah. And she now works in Brooklyn for the Brooklyn Public Library.
Yeah.
State Superintendent Ryan Walters, state school superintendent, is an elected office in Oklahoma. Ryan Walters wasn't satisfied and pushed to revoke her teaching license. He asked the State Board of Education to revoke former Norman Public Schools teacher Summer Boysmere's teaching license because he said that by sharing the QR code of the Brooklyn Public Library, she was providing access to banned and pornographic material to students. So she's suing him now. This is why it came in the news today. She's now suing him. She's doing an E. Jean Carroll. She's going to sue him for defamation. He accused her of sharing porn. And so because he used the word pornographic in his charges in writing, that is defamation. And we are hoping she is awarded E. Jean Carroll amounts of money.
Yep.
So that happened like on Tuesday. And so Wednesday, there was another tweet from Ryan Walters. May I read it to you?
Please do.
I'm excited to announce we have an initiative with PragerU Kids.
That's right.
These additional resources will help ensure quality instruction in American history and values. Talk about spreading porn. He's adopting PragerU as an educator in Oklahoma.
Yep. Does that surprise you?
He gets sued out of his job.
Does that surprise you at all?
No, of course not. We know who he is. He's been elected by MAGAs in Oklahoma.
Well, Which just goes to show you, all the Tubervilles aren't in Alabama.
No, they're not.
They're everywhere.
We have a good solid chunk of listeners in Oklahoma.
Yeah,
and I know that they want to do something about this bozo.
We have listeners in Alabama. We have listeners in all the red states, and we're terribly. We feel for you. Yeah. We feel your pain. We wish there was something we could do, but we are talking to the majority voters in your state who keep choosing to gut the Enlightenment and drag your state back into the Dark Ages.
Yep.
And are happy to do it, are thrilled, because the dumber and more primitive and more diseased and more stupid their populations get, the tighter the control of these idiots will have over them.
Yeah, right.
And the reason they hate us, Blue Gal, is because we represent the Enlightenment. We're the people who look at the future and see a hopeful, bright future for humanity. They see a bleak hellscape and Jesus coming back and pulling them back up to heaven because they're the chosen ones.
We want to thank Kevin at Mock Paper Scissors for reminding us that this is the time of year when there is the giant corn maze in Illinois at the Richardson Adventure Farm, which is up near the Wisconsin border. Mm-hmm. This year's world's largest corn maze, which features over 10 miles of trails, and sits on 28 acres in Spring Grove, Illinois, north of Chicago. The theme this year is 30 years of Jurassic Park. Last year it was 60 years of James Bond, but this year it's 30 years of Jurassic Park. And this maze is really amazing. It's 9 to 10 miles of trail winding through 28 acres, as I said. But the maze is actually created out of 4 smaller mazes. Each maze has its own dedicated in and out path. There are multiple checkpoints throughout the maze, as well as 3 bridges that you can climb up onto the bridge and see where you are in the maze. And there is an easy exit from the bridge to get out of the maze. So it's easy to get in. It's easy to get out. There are no dead ends. And they've made this very family friendly. Corn maze time is just something that is part of our life, isn't it, Driftglass?
It is. And I'd like to salute 30 years of Jurassic Park, in which 3 of those were good. So great.
Yes, right. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty, sometimes sent in by you, the listeners, but we decided this week that once again, our Internet Kitty is Bosco, who is pretty much my cat, gotta say.
He is. Although he's been socialized by everyone.
He has been socialized by everyone. He's much more of a snuggler than he was when we first got him. He will sit on my lap for a good long time. His old song was, Bosco, he's not from Moscow. He went to Costco to get some food. And now the new song is, you can come and go, but you cannot say no to BOSCO.
Every cat in our house gets a theme song. At least
every
one.
cat has a song, but Bosco has 2 songs. Because he's my cat. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Direct, your cat, like Bosco, will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
And you can visit Bosco this week at our Facebook page or website. And you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, Postal Unions! Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. As I said last week, Driftglass has told me that it is not pumpkin spice season yet.
You do it. Do whatever you want. I don't even know you.
He's given up. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job, our livelihood, and your $5 makes a huge difference to us. It really does. Please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. And thank you for doing that.
Oh, by the way, don't bother trying to get Rick Wilson to listen. He already does.
He already does.
You know he already does.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, even Internet Kitties know that when you need someone to flip, you go after the IT guy.
And Bosco is very smug that he stayed home from Burning Man this year.
His paws are clean.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Just think about loving. Think about loving. Just think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2023 DGBG Productions.